Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And let me tell you, today's topic is a fascinating one. We're going to be exploring this idea of, well, it's called the Poetics of Space. Now I know, it sounds kind of out there, right? But trust me on this. It's all about how our homes, you know those places where we hang our hats, how there's so much more than just like bricks and mortar. We're talking about how these spaces really get under our skin and shape who we are. And to help us unpack all of this, we're turning to the work of Gaston Bachelard.
This guy, he was onto something. What I find so fascinating about his work is how he makes this connection, right, between our homes and our inner lives. It's like our homes become these mirrors reflecting back who we are, our dreams, memories, the whole shebang. Bachelard calls this the psychological transcendent of a house.
Psychological transcendent? Whoa, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So are you saying our houses are basically imprinted on our souls? That they hold more than just, like, our stuff?
You got it. It's like, think about it this way. Bachelard compares a house to the human body.
Okay, now that's an interesting analogy. Tell me more. I'm hooked.
So picture this. The cellar, often kind of dark, hidden away, that represents our primal instincts, the subconscious stuff. And then you've got the attic, reaching up high, almost like it's striving for something more, that symbolizes our aspirations, our loftier ideals. It's like the very architecture of a house. It's mirroring the architecture of ourselves.
Wow, I've never thought about it like that before, but it makes so much sense. I mean, I've always been drawn to houses with these big open attics, Makes you wonder if it's some kind of subconscious thing, like a desire for endless possibilities. But it's not all about grand designs and spacious attics, is it? Because Bachelard also talks about this universal need for refuge, right? That primal need for shelter, even within the grandest of homes.
Absolutely. He uses this great example of this author, Henri Bachelin, who found that feeling of refuge, not in some grand castle or anything, but in the cozy sitting room of his childhood home.
See, it's those little spaces, those havens that make all the difference. Kind of like when I build a pillow fort with my kids. I swear I get more into it than they do. But there's just something about creating that little enclosed space, And speaking of enclosures, Bachelard, he dives into the symbolism of nests and shells, those primal shelters we find everywhere in nature.
And not just nature, right? But how our imaginations, they kind of gravitate towards these forms too. It's like we crave that sense of being completely enveloped, protected, like retreating into this safe haven. Bachelard even talks about this guy, Bernard Palissy, who dreamed of building a fortress, but get this, shaped like a giant shell.
Wait, hold up. A shell-shaped fortress? That's amazing. Okay, I need to hear more about this.
Right.
That's like the ultimate expression of craving security, wouldn't you say? But, it strikes me that Bachelard, he goes beyond just the physical with this, right? Like, it's not just about literally hiding away in some bunker. He's also interested in how even the tiniest of objects can evoke this feeling of vastness, like a sense of intimate immensity, as he calls it.
That's what's so cool about Bachelard's thinking. Like, he's all about these paradoxes, It's like, how can something so small, so contained, make you feel the presence of something much, much bigger? But it's true, though, when you really think about it. I mean, haven't you ever looked at something tiny and felt like you were seeing a whole world in there?
Okay, yeah, actually, now that you mention it.
It's like those incredibly detailed snow globes, right?
Yeah. Oh, right. With the little winter scenes all trapped inside.
Exactly. A whole tiny world frozen in time. Or what about, remember that scene in Men in Black, that galaxy in a cat collar?
Oh, man, that's such a good example. It's funny, but it really gets at that idea, right? Like, our imaginations can find vastness in the most unexpected places.
Totally. And Bachelard even uses this example, Cyrano de Bergerac, and how he imagined a whole world existing inside, get this, an apple seed.
An apple seed. Wow, that's wild. And, it kind of reminds me of how we experience nature too, right? Like when you look up at a night sky and you feel so small, but also part of something so much bigger than yourself.
Exactly. It's that feeling of awe, right? And Bachelard talks about how those vast landscapes, forests, deserts, even the ocean, they can become a part of us. It's like we internalize them so they actually enrich our inner world.
So you're saying that our experiences of the outside, even the really big stuff, actually influences our own personal inner landscape.
Absolutely. Like, think about it. You don't just see a forest, you hear the wind in the trees, you smell the damp earth. It all leaves its mark.
That's fascinating. It's like we carry those experiences with us wherever we go. And speaking of sensory experiences, you know what else I find fascinating? Silence. Bachelard talks about this too, right?
Yeah.
But how does that fit into all this talk about houses and spaces? It seems a little different.
Well, think about this for a second. How does silence feel different depending on where you are? Like the quiet of a library versus, say, the stillness of a desert. One might feel peaceful, the other a little unsettling.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
So Bachelard was really interested in how silence isn't just like the absence of sound. It actually has a presence, like it can shape our moods, our thoughts, especially when we're in enclosed spaces.
Now that you mention it, I've definitely felt that before. Like being in a crowded room when it suddenly goes silent, it's a completely different feeling from being alone in nature and experiencing that kind of quiet.
Right. And Bachelard illustrates this with a quote from Michelet, who describes a bird song as and I love this, a round cry, resonating within the roundness of the sky. It's a really poetic way of showing that even sounds, they play a role in how we experience space. They can create this feeling of wholeness.
Like all these things, the sights, the sounds, even the silence, they all come together to shape our experience of a space.
Right. Exactly. And it takes us back to that initial idea. Our homes, they're so much more than just physical structures. They're dynamic environments that really have a profound impact on us. We've covered so much ground here, from the house as a body to the symbolism of those primal shelters, from miniature worlds to this idea of silence as an active presence. I think what ties it all together is that Bachelard, he really encourages us to see our homes, our spaces, as these reflections of our inner selves.
It's like he's giving us a whole new language to understand how our environments really do shape who we are. All these little details we might not even notice, they're actually speaking volumes. But before we get too philosophical here, I got to ask you. When you just need to escape, find a little peace and quiet, where do you go? What's your go-to spot?
For me, it's got to be nature. Being by the ocean especially. Something about that vastness, the sound of the wave, just kind of washes everything away, like hitting the reset button.
Yeah, I get that. Wide open spaces, there's definitely something to be said for that. But Bachelard, he doesn't just focus on those grand scales, does he? He's also interested in the smaller things, those sensory details that really make a space feel like home. Like what about the smell of coffee in the morning, or that feeling of a worn rug under your feet,
Oh, absolutely. He talks about how we read a house just like we read a book. All those little details, every nook and cranny, those scents, sounds, they all tell a story. And those sensory experiences, they're powerful. They can evoke memories, shape our moods, even connect us to our past selves,
It's like our homes become these living photo albums. But instead of pictures, it's that scent of your grandmother's baking or the sound of a creaky floorboard that brings those memories flooding back.
That's a perfect way to put it. And, Bachelard really encourages us to pay attention to those details, to really be present in our spaces, because those spaces, they shape our inner lives in ways we might not even realize.
It's not just about decorating a house. It's about creating an experience.
Exactly.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I'm seeing my own house, even my own memories, in a whole new light.
That's the beauty of Bachelard's work, right? It gives us these new lenses to see the world around us, to appreciate those everyday spaces we often take for granted.
Well said. So, to everyone listening, next time you walk through your front door, take a second. Really be present in that space. Notice the way the light falls, the scent in the air, how the floor feels beneath your feet. You might be surprised what you discover. Who knows? You might even unlock a hidden memory or two. Until next time, keep exploring.